So just raise your hand, say your name, and I'll come to you, and then we go from there. So the three questions are, is how do you think aquaculture and public fisheries can work together to improve the resource? Is theft and poaching a problem for aquaculture and public fisheries, and how can folks work together to minimize it or find solutions to it? And then how important is the source of oyster shell to your industry? Do you have any ideas of how to enhance the shell resource? So those are sort of the three topics. And so we'll do that in a second, but first I'd like to ask for Steve Fleetwood to briefly introduce himself, say a couple things about himself. Steve?
Hello, I'm Steve Fleetwood. I've been in the industry most of my life. I run Bival Packing Company for the last 35 years. We grow oysters, ship oysters, Delaware Bay oysters throughout the United States. I'm on the Delaware Bay Shellfish Council, been on that 20-some years. Through the good and the bad, sometimes it's been pretty bad, but we've got a lot done and we have a good cooperative effort with our state and everything, so thank you.
Great, thanks. And then Donald Porter.
Hello, my name is Don Porter. I'm a commercial fisherman for the state of Virginia. 2 years on the shellfish committee. That's basically about it.
All right, and John Vigoletta.
Yeah, my name is John Vigliotta, and I grow oysters in cages. I own Mob Jack Bay Seafood and Ward Oyster Company, located in the state of Virginia. And, you know, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you think aquaculture and public fisheries can work together to improve the oyster resource? Would one of our panelists like to start that discussion, and we'll go to the audience. Thoughts on that? Anybody? Go ahead. Bill?
Well, I can speak to it a little bit as to how it's worked out in Washington State. So there's this, Washington State has a plan to restore the native oyster, little Olympia oyster that I talked about, but they don't have any resources to implement that plan. And so we have a nonprofit group, the Puget Sound Restoration Fund, that's taken it on their own to raise money and do that. And we cooperate with them. We're on their board of directors. We'll provide shell from the commercial operation, not just Taylor's, but other companies will provide shell for those restoration projects. At times, we'll use our hatcheries to produce seed for those restoration projects. Collaborate on water quality, ocean acidification, things that are of mutual importance to both the restoration and the aquaculture community. So those are some of the ways that we work together anyhow collaboratively.
Other panelists have anything you'd like to add? Go ahead.
In the Delaware Bay, one of the things that was in some of those graphics I showed was there was a public fishery in the upper part of the bay and private lease grounds in the lower part of the bay. And when we were having consistent levels of high recruitment, those lease grounds were all actively being farmed in an extensive manner. And if aquaculture, whether it's extensive aquaculture in that traditional lease method or if it's in cage culture or something like that, and start to do that and become essentially a source of brood stock, the larvae don't move just down bay. As the tide comes in, they move up bay and they find places where they want to set, and so that can help enhance recruitment throughout the whole system. So in those two ways, I think we can work together.
Yeah, good.
Another way that, when you have the aquaculture production during the summer months takes a lot of pressure off of the, wild harvest, so that you have oysters coming from other places and year-round oysters, and that's, I think, a positive for your total overall oyster production.
Any other panelists want to weigh in before we open it up? Jim?
I mean, just like John said, the main thing that the two industries do for each other is they provide year-round jobs for the same equipment that would be idle for part of the year if we didn't have both fisheries. I mean, Virginia is very different than Maryland because we have 130,000 acres of private ground, so it's a whole lot of work in the off season, and the production on private ground is actually higher than the production off the public, so. For all the shucking houses and infrastructure we have, the private kind of take care of more than half the year.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I like to think that, like Dave said, in Delaware Bay, we're pretty much managing our whole, public resource. We move shell in there, we put shell in when the spat's in the water. We move shell down from the upper part of the bay where it's not being utilized. And again, with the aquaculture operations that are going on down along the Cape Shore and the southern part of the bay, it always helps enhance, my own grounds that I farm and state bottom, and also, we don't have any oysters in the bay. Most of our oysters reproduce, so it's always a good thing. The more you have, the more spats you're going to get in the water, I guess.
Another thought comes to mind, an area that we've collaborated with the restoration community is in 2011, at the national level, NOAA updated the national aquaculture policies, and they launched a national shellfish initiative to implement that policy. And in Washington State, we were able to get our Governor Gregoire at the time, excited about that opportunity, and she launched a Washington State shellfish initiative to implement that national one. But our focus wasn't just on aquaculture. We made it all things shellfish. So we brought in the restoration community, we had the Nature Conservancy and this Puget Sound Restoration Fund, and the Puget Sound Partnership, which deals with water quality throughout Puget Sound, and the research community and the recreational community. So it was all things shellfish, a very broad initiative that brought forward a lot of great things. In fact, it's been perpetuated. The second phase of it was just launched in January by our new governor, Governor Inslee. But that's been a good collaboration between, all aspects of shellfish to bring positive things to bear there. So.
Anybody else? All right, questions, comments, thoughts? Calling you, come on.
I think it would work perfect if they just us as a waterman and everything else. But I mean, I don't see why we can't all just get along. But I mean, I think the most important thing, we've got to stop this constant driving of these environmental groups, to batter one against the other. That's the most important thing.
All right, thanks.
I don't cuss either one of them on both. Yeah, well, me too. So. I wish my ground was good without a right back. You're right. Runs up your way.
How are you? Chris Judy. I was alluded to, so I might as well put it in my own words. So something I said recently, maybe it has some bearing. I have a little catchphrase. I used to actually end my emails with it. The bay's a big place. There's room for everyone. We can work it out together. I think that's an important theme to embrace. I've tried to do that with my career. There are issues between aquaculture, public fishery. We got trot line. We got a lot of watermen. There's a lot of bottom. There are conflicts, no doubt about it. But I think if we keep in mind the bay's a big place, room for everybody, let's work it out together. That's a good way to start.
All right, that's why we're here, right? Yes, sir.
On this range from public fishery to aquaculture, it strikes me we didn't hear much from either Jim or Karen about what is Virginia producing more oysters than either of those, that is the public via the leased grounds. So how does that work, and how do they avoid over-harvesting, and also how do they replenish the shell that's necessary in the private grounds? Or do they still have, the private leases have the same sets of problems?
Let's save the shell question, because that's a separate discussion we're going to have in a minute. The other question, go ahead.
Well, private leaseholders have the same problems that you would have on public. They do have to come up with seed, they do have to come up with shell, and they do have to manage their own lease. Otherwise, if they don't manage it, then, and we do have this go on somewhere, that you just take what's on it and you give it back to the state. That's a problem we have, but eventually that'll play itself out. But those that are doing correctly, they have, you know, they are farmers in the fact that they have to put out a crop because they don't start with a bed. Public grounds were set aside because they had some history of having oysters and shell. Private grounds have had to be built over time. So.
Anybody else?
Something's running through my mind that I think might be relevant. I used to work in South Carolina where all oysters are intertidally. And they have different kinds of grounds out there. And I'm probably going to get the names of the grounds wrong, but I'll state what I think they are. But there's public grounds, there's state grounds, there's leases, and there's closed areas. And if you go across the tides out and you look at these areas, they're open for different reasons. So closed grounds, obviously, those aren't being harvested. And if you look at the reef on there from sort of a environmental kind of quality, what it looks like, those look like sort of the healthiest, the most diverse structured reefs that they're not being harvested, but they're usually in polluted waters. You can't harvest them. But they're working and functioning ecologically really well. If you go to the state grounds, I think those are the ones that are open to anybody to go harvest. The season opens, you come back a little bit later, it's usually mud. You go to the public grounds, those I believe are recreationally harvested. So you can't harvest them commercially, you can harvest them recreationally. When those get open, they're kind of picked over, and there's oysters here and there, and usually the small ones, the big ones are usually kind of gone. And then you go to the leased grounds. Now the leased ones, those are managed privately. They look like a farm. You go there, the oysters they're all kind of the same, they're all uniform, they're kind of the same age class, and depending on where they are in the harvest cycle is what they kind of look like. They're functioning at a different level. And so you see these different management things having different impacts on them. And I think that's what you're probably going to see on these leased grounds that Jim was just talking about, that depending on what stage they are in the cycle, and actually I think you saw it in Bill's talk, where he had grounds on there where he showed this nice oyster bed out there, and so they're going to go in and remove those oysters, and then they're going to remove the plants, and then they're going to start it over. And it's going to go through a successional process. You're going to see that kind of thing happen. These management strategies can really have a lot of different impacts, and they're not necessarily, remember the word impact doesn't mean negative. That's the other thing I want to say. When we was talking about the environmental groups in the back, I hear the word impact, and if it comes from an environmental group, I usually think they're talking about negative impacts. Think about that word if you're talking about your child's education. You want the impact to be positive. If you're going to talk about managing an oyster resource, you want the impact to be positive. It can be positive. It doesn't always have to be negative. So, sorry, I got off my
No, that was good, actually. Anybody else? Sure.
Dave McGinnis Productions. I've been doing a documentary on watermen in Chesapeake Bay for a few years. Dr. Wesson, I know, one thing that I see here, a good answer to this question that I've seen, perhaps the two working together most closely is Weaver Seed Program in Virginia, just in the fact that by hand-towing the seed or moving the seed, and I think there are a few other, there's a Bivo that maybe does some of that, but it gives these watermen several months of work in the spring, and that seed is then transported to other parts of the state. Usually, it's planted both on public, but a lot of it goes to private ground where they've got major aquaculture operations, and to me, that seems to be an area where the public fishery and the aquaculture have been able to work together effectively to benefit both. Could you maybe, somebody, Dr. Wesson or anybody else, speak to how the benefits of that seed program?
Thanks.
Well, the James River Seed Resource is got probably one of the most historic oyster beds in the world, but we allow seed harvest in the James River from areas that we designate as seed beds, that anybody can go and get seed there for actually nothing, just the cost of their surcharge, and then they take it back and put it on their private ground, and we have a quota on that seed as long as they don't go over the quota, which is 125,000 bushels. It's unlimited to that point, and I our industry does not take advantage of that as much as they should. We also have seed beds in 2 other areas that we manage by, there's an application process that after we do a stock assessment, we know how many seed we can afford to take out of those 2 areas in the Chesapeake and River Comico, and we let people apply for as many bushels as they want. We may not give them the amount that they want, but in order to take the seed, they have to give us 2 bushels of shell back. They have to take care of replanting the shell on that bed as their cost of it. We don't, we'll assist them with it, but we found out that taking money did not work as well as just making sure that they actually put the 2 bushels for every bushel back in order to participate. And that varies. We have 25 to 30,000 bushels that we allow to do that way.
Why has what he spoke about, the replenishment in Maryland, gone down as far as utilizing the buy boats and having them transplant from other areas to commercial grounds for the watermen to harvest? That's decreased over the past 3 years. I mean, significantly.
Analyst?
From Maryland.
Chris?
Chris!
I was writing down my next comment.
What
What was the question?
Why has the transplanting of seed from the bay into the wild public grounds, why has that decreased over the past 3 years?
I thought that was a James River question. All right, so in Maryland, the situation, let's look at a timeline. So we had an aggressive shell planting program, as Jim has. We had first from 1960 to 2006. We planted around 5 million bushels per year. The last 10 years, it went to around 1 to 2 million bushels per year. So in terms of a shell budget, we were adding more shell every year than was being removed by harvest. And something else that shell program did, it allowed us to establish what we call seed areas. We made thick plantings of shell. They got a spat set in certain targeted areas where we had good reproduction. Those seed oysters were moved, so that's what you're referring to. When the shell program ended in 2006, we no longer had the great quantities of shell to maintain the seed areas. You heard about maintaining the shell budget, maintaining the bottom. So we couldn't maintain our seed areas, except for maybe a year or 2 after the shell program ended. You know, the shells were there, but then they deteriorated, basically sunk into the bottom. They didn't break up as in Virginia. Just want to make that point. Our shells tend to sand and sink in versus disintegrate. So without the high quantities of shell to maintain the seed areas, the seed program simply wound down. It's like a watch you used to have to wind. You don't wind it, it winds down. So we ran out of shells. Therefore, a couple years later, the seed program simply ended.
But they had a program where they had the watermen going around and fabulous dredging, bringing those shells back to the surface.
Yeah, that quantity of shell isn't enough to maintain a seed area. We had 5 or 6 seed areas in the state. That's what drove that seed program. And they were planted with about 250,000 to 500,000 bushels per year. We basically committed about 1 million bushels per year just to maintain the seed program. And the shells we get from those types of efforts you mentioned, and shucking house shells, they're just a drop in the bucket. They're just a mist in the wind compared to the 1 million bushels we used to get.
And the third question is going to be on shell, so if it's a shell question, let's hold that. Yeah, go ahead.
I did have another
Chris,
comment.
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to go so long into shells, but I wanted to answer your question. So on this one, working together, my last comment was more something I guess you could hug and like. But in terms of concrete, let me just put this out here for Maryland. We have growers associations in the aquaculture world. So what if the aquaculture folk and the public community fishery thought, what are our common needs on shells? Another common need, hatchery larvae. There's a shortage of larvae in Maryland. We heard about that from other areas. So maybe a meeting where the Growers Association and we have a county oyster we have a meeting, get together, talk about our common issues and how we can solve them together. So I think one way to work together is to start working together and talk through our needs, our issues, and see how we can help each other.
That's a great idea. Yes, sir. You got it? The Sabre Shell question, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. All right, other questions on aquaculture and public fisheries while oysters work together? To improve the resource. Other ideas? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Don Leonard, one of the things, Chris, you might consider is if you remember when we opened rockfish season again, after a moratorium, I mean, there was a big struggle over allocation. You know, you had three groups. You had your commercial guys, you had your charter fishermen, and you had your recreational. And the only way that we were able to do it is the Secretary of DNR pulled together a summit, and he forced everybody into a situation where they had to do team building, which they hated. And by the end of a couple of days, they were forced to make the decision on the allocation. They still do that now, I believe, at DNR, similar process. Why couldn't we do that with the oyster management issues? What's the difference? Three groups, basically. So bring them together.